TV's got the wrong rap. Retailers often balk at the investment size and time horizon required to see ROAS from TV brand building. Retailers that believe this myth quickly find themselves hitting a wall and never realize TV's full potential to deliver a step change in scale. In this session, learn how the Farmer's Dog challenges several D2C conventions in data analysis, media planning, and buying to drive new customer acquisition with precision, accountability, transparency, and flexibility. Please join me in welcoming our speakers. Alison Monk, founder and CEO at Eden Collective, and Kendra Prasad, the Director of Acquisition for the Farmer's Dog.
Hey everyone, we're standing, which seems to be a controversial decision. But it's not a conversation, it's more of like a presentation. So, what do we mean when we say from performance media to media performance? And I think based on some of the conversations we have heard during the past couple of days, I think the way that I would describe it is instead of building your media mix based on what can be measured, measuring your media mix based on the principles of marketing that you've designed based on the principles of marketing and media. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I just said that, so there. Okay, I know that when we're talking to an audience, and I don't know sort of where everyone is on the learning and knowledge curve of TV, which can be a little bit of an arcane topic, I wanted to sort of set the stage. This is a foundational slide, so forgive us if you are deeply familiar with the channel linear TV. This is a depiction, a very simplified depiction of the inventory markets in linear TV and the total pool of inventory and how it's bought. At the top, first, before anyone touches anything, there are the upfronts. Many of you may be familiar with the upfronts. It's the time of year where the networks present all of their new programming and the large advertisers buy multi-million-dollar packages of media. And that represents about 65 or 75% of all media for the year. It gets locked in the beginning of the year. And after that, the inventory that's not sold flows down to what's called the scatter market. And the scatter market is similar to the upfront, in which when you buy the ratings points, the impressions, that media is guaranteed. It's for the most part non-cancelable. There are cancellation clauses, but it's less flexible. The cancellations are limited. The scatter market, because it gives you more nimbleness, because you could buy it on a quarterly basis or more frequently, it is actually the highest priced inventory, but it is giving you that flexibility. What many of you who are familiar with the TV market, if you're a DTC brand or a performance-oriented brand, at least in the early stages, and this was true when we started working with the Farmer's Dog in the beginning of 2020, the bulk of that investment, if not exclusively, is concentrated in the DR market, which is sort of the leftover after everything. And what's great about the DR market, and the reason that DTC or performance marketers use it, is because you can buy it and move in and out of position on a weekly basis, depending on what you see happening. And it's very cheap, so that's a real benefit. It's nimble, it's cheap, which is sort of manna from heaven to the DR marketer. But it's compared a lot to digital. And I want to point out the key difference of why linear TV is not like digital, and that is that this inventory is, in the world of digital, inventory is limitless. In the world of DR, your inventory is scarce, and your inventory can be preempted. This is a really important topic that'll go through the rest of our conversation, that you're going to hear us talk a lot about clearance, whether your inventory has cleared or not, and that clearance can vary week over week, month over month. So those of you who are DR marketers or work with DR marketers, this playbook might look very familiar. You're concentrating in the DR market. Sometimes you're even buying that inventory weekly. You're compensating for these unpredictable swings in inventory by having a very, very long list of networks rather than concentrating your investment in just a few. And you may be relying on someone's promise of a real-time automated dashboard. And the implication to the story that's being told to a lot of DTC marketers, and this again was true of the Farmer's Dog when we started working with them, is that the traditional rules of planning and buying don't apply. That if you just rely on these dashboards, the buying part is sort of a commodity, that you really don't need any expertise to understand anything about the buying markets, because the analytics and the data will tell you everything you need to know, and you sort of press a button. That works really well, and for DTC marketers for many years, and it was working well for the Farmer's Dog. They were scaling very well. But as I sort of alluded to before, it is entirely predicated on an environment of abundant inventory. And what this slide will say, we don't have to go through everything on this slide, but suffice it to say that we are no longer, and probably never will be again, in a world of abundant inventory on the TV side of the business. And this is true for linear. It is, more and more advertisers are entering the market trying to gain access to what is a shrinking pool of inventory, actually driving up the prices. DTC brands are coming in. And on the CTV side, it's true. Eyeballs are flowing to CTV. But the inventory pool is still not, the ad-supported inventory pool is still not expanding fast enough to catch up to all of that advertiser demand. So let's talk about this idea of a reliance on dashboards, and this idea that the buying part is a commodity because the industry has figured out a way to lean entirely on dashboards to be able to inform buying decisions. This is a completely fake mini dashboard that is for illustrative purposes only. But it gives you an example of the kinds of things you look at, the kinds of things that are important as when you're a performance marketer entirely leaning in on the DR market. So if you look over here on the illustrative dashboard snapshot, what you'll see is an example of 3 networks. Let's presume that around $80 or so, and below is an extremely attractive cost per acquisition. And then the other thing, of course, a client like the Farmer's Dog would care about are your conversion numbers, the number of sales that's delivering. Now we go over here to the illustrative weekly clearance chart that shows what the clearance rates are, in fact, how much inventory the networks were able to clear that wasn't preempted in a particular week, week over week. Well, what we see is that FYI is clearing really well at 80%. And that's fantastic. But wait a minute, it's only delivering 22 sales. So how am I going to make up that volume? Wow, I'm just going to go over to CNN and Discovery, and I'm going to buy way more of that, and then we'll, joyously be able to provide those sales numbers to our investors. But if you go over here to the clearance chart, what you see is when those dashboards were made, it was way up there before week 1, when we had very high clearance rates. And if you look at these illustrative charts, what you see is a network like CNN News. We've either hit a breaking news moment or a political moment, and all of a sudden, these 2 networks, which Kendra was relying on to deliver the sales forecast that her investors are demanding, are no longer clearing. They have been preempted. And if I'm relying on the DR market, I really don't have many other places to go that quickly. And so that's a very important point. Dashboards with dummy buyers who don't know how to work in the market don't really know how to react to a situation like this. Kendra's going to talk about that one. Here's one other example before I pass it to what we do. And this is not really talking about the inventory scarcity, but is going to dive a little bit deeper into this idea of an over-reliance on a dashboard. And this is actually a connected TV example. And this is an example, also fake numbers, of a campaign that we ran on, the major connected streaming network that most brands that enter connected TV start with. And we see here that the cost per acquisition when the same ad has run on a connected TV, meaning on your large screen in your living room, it delivers a roughly $300 cost per acquisition. When that same exact ad, as part of the same exact campaign, runs on your mobile device, this attribution software that we were using indicates that it's only a $30 cost per acquisition. Wow, so how would a brand apply that insight if it were relying exclusively on a dashboard to then invest that media? Well, they would pour all of their money into mobile delivery of that ad. And the question is, would that be a good idea? Well, the first question is, does that make any logical sense? Why an ad that you're watching on your phone when you convert on your phone? Remember, these are not clickable ads. It's a streaming video, and you are watching a TV program, the same TV program that you're watching on your big screen. Why would the ad on your mobile device be 10x better? Well, the answer has nothing to do with the quality of the advertising and the quality of the media buy. It has everything to do with the nature of the deterministic attribution solutions available in the marketplace and their ability to correctly match a device ID of your phone to a conversion on your phone with the device ID with the device ID of your phone to a device ID of a smart TV on your wall with a device ID on your phone as belonging to the same person or the same household. And that sort of loss of data in the match rate is what's driving the distinction in these numbers, and it is driving you to make bad media decisions. And so I'm going to now turn it over to Kendra to talk about what we did do to combat all of this.
So the farmer's dog is on a mission to change the status quo of the pet food industry. Our goal is to improve the health and longevity of dogs and therefore the lives of dog people everywhere. There are nearly 100 million dogs in the US alone, so it's a big goal. And in order to achieve this really important mission, we need to grow, and we need to grow quickly. And so when we talk about this shift to a media performance mindset that enables that scale, there's three main pillars within that. So first is a disciplined strategy for balancing both audience reach and CAC. It's possible to achieve both and create a strategy that doesn't inhibit either. Number two, partnering with a team and the right buyers that understand the nuances of all inventory markets and when to move in and out of those markets based on seasonality, based on market trends, and also just based on the goals of your business. And three, creating or sort of aligning around an audience-centric measurement and optimization approach. So the whole purpose of this conversation is the performance of your media rather than the overall performance of your media rather than the performance of these downstream low funnel metrics. So one of the ways we can deploy this strategy to achieve both scale and efficiency is simply by optimizing between networks types and understanding what networks and what buys deliver what value, grouping them according to that value, and then not only optimizing these against each other, understanding that your reach drivers are going to have a higher CPA, your DR spots are going to have a lower CPA, optimizing those two against one another, but also within each of these tiers as well. So this is the slide that goes into the three inventory markets that Alison laid out at the beginning of this presentation. Like most D2C brands, we leaned heavily into the DR marketplace in 2020. There was an abundance of inventory. It was a really good time and opportunity for us, and we were able to scale very efficiently. I think going into this year, we all knew that there was going to be some unpredictability, some volatility. We didn't know exactly when that would happen and what it would look like, but we needed to be prepared. And so in March, the end of Q1, when we got news that the vaccine would be starting to roll out to the general population, we saw almost an immediate decline in our clearance percentage on DR. And so we very quickly, because we knew that this could happen at any point in time, leaned into the scatter market. And like Alison talked about at the beginning as well, the scatter market and those fixed buys do come at a more premium cost. But for us and a brand that has goals to grow in the way that we do, momentum is imperative, and so losing that momentum for a period of time really has long-term implications. So it makes sense to invest a little bit more for a short period of time and then optimize from there. And so we did lean pretty heavily into the scatter market through Q2. Our team predicted a softening market in July based on their conversations with the networks and seasonality and just what they were seeing across the board. And so we leaned back into the DR space at that point and then supplemented the rest of our Q3 buys with scatter. So now we've used scatter for 3 quarters in a row. We did test a little bit with some scatter buys in 2020. We knew at this point what programs and what networks we need to clear on, and what's driving scale, and where is our audience. And so for us, it made sense to lean pretty heavily into the upfront and invest that money, knowing that we've committed, but expecting actually greater efficiency in Q4 and through 2022 because the upfront market comes at a more efficient rate than the scatter buys. Now, we'll continue to supplement our TV strategy with more DR buys. We'll always take advantage of fire sales and opportunities, potentially layer in more scatter buys. But we know we have a guaranteed level of clearance that will ensure that we hit our goals next year.
When we worked with the networks to lay out the upfront buy, I mean, it was a large commitment, but we worked with the networks to lay out the upfront buy so that the buy is, the upfronts are more heavily concentrated in the periods where we know confidently we are less likely to clear in DR, and relying, again, more heavily on DR in those other months.
So I think it's really exciting for brands to participate in big events. We love to see the amazing work of our creative teams. We love to see all the hard work that we've put into our brand up on a big screen in a big moment. But there are a lot of nuances and important things to keep in mind when participating in an event. So first and foremost, does the event itself align with your target audience? Are they going to be watching it? And second, what are you doing to make sure that you're prolonging that exposure that you gain from a large event? Typically, when you participate in any sort of event like this, you'll see obviously an immediate spike in impressions, site visits, probably very little conversion lift. And then within a couple of days, that basically spike has gone down completely, and you're exactly where you were prior to that event, which is essentially a wasted investment. And these are obviously large sums of money. So what we did this year, and this is a real example, we know that tennis is generally like a type of programming that works well for us. We know that our target audience is watching the US Open. And so we participated in the US Open, but to ensure that prolonged awareness, we supplemented that buy and followed the US Open with a mixture of both scatter and DR sports adjacent networks that we know that audience is watching. So we're able to continue moving them through the funnel. We're super deliberate about the creative that we're using on these supplemental buys as well. And obviously we're not 11 weeks out from the US Open yet. So some of this is an estimate, but early performance is showing success and sort of a higher level of general awareness for our brand than before the event. And so this, I think, sort of encompasses this entire conversation. And you see the conversions section here, media performance. I think a lot of times we can get, especially as performance marketers, in this cycle of just looking at, okay, who converted and how do I find more of them? But really, in order to scale and have long-term growth, it goes back to sort of the basic principles of marketing, taking a step back and just saying, who do I want to reach and how do I need to communicate with them? Where are they? And if you do that effectively, the rest will come. And so your downstream metrics will, by default, start to improve as well. And if they're not, you simply go back to the top and figure out, okay, I'm obviously not communicating right, something's not resonating, I'm not meeting these people where they are. But just understanding that you can't scale effectively if you're optimizing within this like very small subset of data, and you're likely missing out on a large population. And so by focusing on media performance and taking a step back and just focusing on the who do I want to reach and why and where, you actually expand your funnel and unlock full market potential. So basically every area of the funnel increases, and then of course at the end, so do your conversions. And then we couldn't do a farmer's dog presentation without dog memes. So the cute little lab, he's cute but silly because he's focusing too much on downstream performance metrics, so he's leading himself in a circle. And then you want to be like the dogs running in a pack. So that's it. Thank you.